That hurt my shoulder. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing a reading vlog of the books that have been on my TBR the longest. Before we get into anything bookish, however, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is the book that's been on your TBR the longest. So yes, easy way to understand how this reading vlog came about. I basically went to my Goodreads and said, okay, what of these books has been here for way too long, and we're gonna read them. We're gonna get them off. We're finally gonna do it. The first one was actually on my 10 books that I need to get read in 2022, and that was The Giver by Lois Lowery. I added this November of 2009. I added this book when I was 13. My guess is it probably went on there because I was in middle school. I was actually getting really into reading for classes, and I realized this was one of the few books many people had to read for school previously that I never did. So I wanted to actually read it so I could join into conversations whenever it happened to come up in English class. That wasn't actually very often, so I don't know why I was that concerned. But even still, I never read it. So I'm finally gonna remedy that. It's barely 200 pages. I think it's the start in a series. I'm not 100% sure on if I really need to continue the series or if I'll even want to, because I do believe this is definitely geared towards the younger side of YA. We'll see about that. I do believe this is a dystopian novel as well, and unfortunately for me, once upon a time I might have been particularly interested in that genre. That time has since passed. You can see whenever I stopped updating on Goodreads and whenever I stopped reading as much, because there's quite a jump between that one and this next, which is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom. I added this in February 2017. I was a freshman in college. Yeah, so it'd been a while. This one I think I added right around the time when the movie came out because I was really intrigued by that. It gave me very similar feels to the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland movie, which although it's quite different from the books, I did really love. So of course I wanted to find out what was the source material for this story and dive into it. Clearly that never happened, so I also haven't even watched the movie. Maybe I'll do that once I finally read this. I now know that apparently this book was a compilation of photos that Ransom put together to then create a story, which I do have to say is a very interesting way to write a book, and I'm really into it. I also really love that he has the photos included within the book. I think it's going to make for a very immersive, creepy, unsettling reading experience, so I'm really excited about that. Finally, the last book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog, which was also added to my TBR because of the movie, is The Secret Service, aka Kingsman by Mark Millar. I'm honestly probably going to slip up and just continuously call this Kingsman throughout the video, so don't get mad. This was added in November of 2018. I'm fairly certain I added this around the time of the second movie, and I only added it because I found out, oh my god, this is based on a comic book and I freaking love these movies. I want more that is set in this universe. Specifically, this one on my list is the first volume. I believe it is issues 1 through 6. I do know there is a second volume. I don't think it is quite the same as the second movie at all, but that being said, I haven't read this yet. I don't know if it'll be the same as the first movie either, so we'll see. Hollywood definitely takes some liberties when translating books to movies, so I'm not going in expecting this to be exactly the same, but hopefully it'll be pretty similar because I do really love those movies and the universe that has been created. This is written by Mark Millar, who is a graphic novelist I've read from in the past. Wanted, I think, is the big one that most people know. He is pretty well known for his stories being pretty violent and dark, so I think that's kind of perfect for the Kingsman story. I honestly don't know which order I'm going to go in reading this. We'll see how this is laid out. If you're really curious, I'm sure I put timestamps in the description down below and you can kind of hop around to see where you want to go from here. I will talk to you guys again when I have started into the first book for this video. Hey y'all, so first book down from the oldest books on my TBR was Kingsman by Mark Millar. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations, rare situations, where the movie is better. I love these movies. I have rewatched them countless times. I am super invested in the universe that has been created, so this was a bit of a letdown. Don't get me wrong, like I can see the connection between the book and the movie. I can see that this still has the base plot of giving a wannabe gangster punk from London a My Fair Lady treatment and making him into the suave secret spy. That was about it. The characters were incredibly two-dimensional. In terms of design, majority of the men were very interchangeable, excluding like hairstyles, and even with that, some of those were interchangeable still. The villain was far less interesting or charismatic. I guess it makes him more villainous, but it's really messed up that he was mocking all of the disabled vets that worked for him. I get it, being an ableist makes you more of an asshole, but okay, was that really necessary? Also, any reference to sex just felt incredibly shoehorned in and uncomfortable. Very much so. I don't think it was necessary at all. There was even a series of panels with a naked woman that I don't understand what the necessity of it was, honestly. Like, you could have just easily drawn a sheet over her and I think it still would have had the exact same effect. The ending was incredibly rushed. We didn't really get a satisfying feeling from them defeating the villain. It lacked the comedy that the movies had, which makes the characters so much more entertaining, but also makes you so much more invested in them. This was just a bit of a letdown. In terms of positives, like this, it definitely doesn't shy away from the violence, and it's Mark Millar, so I'm not really surprised. And because of that, like, it fits well with the storyline. I did also really appreciate that Eggsy's mom plays a more pivotal role in the comics. We don't really see a lot of her in the movies. Also, the fact that our supervillain is collecting all of the actors who are in his favorite sci-fi TV shows and movies, that's hilarious. The beginning scene of the movie is Mark Hamill's character, Dr. Arnold, being held hostage, but in the comic, it is actually Mark Hamill being held hostage. So the fact that he actually played the character makes it 10 times better. In the end, I'm glad this comic exists because it was the starting off point for a fantastic movie series, and eventually we're actually going to get a Statesman TV show. I'm very excited for that. But it was like a 3-star read. Honestly, it's a quick read, so like, I guess you can still push through it even if it's only a 3-star, but don't go out of your way for this one. My contact is driving me crazy. Hey guys, so I am actually very far into this and I'm just now updating you. I'm at page 218 out of 352, I believe, into Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I did not intend to read that far before updating you, but it kind of just happened like that. I started this last night also, so put that in perspective. I'm working through it very quickly. Right out of the gate, I have to say, I did not realize that this starts in a contemporary setting. I mean, when we first meet our main character, he is working at a Rite Aid. It's some kind of a big name grocery store that we do not have around here, but it's in Florida and I just wasn't expecting that. I thought this was in much more of a fantasy world, but turns out it actually kind of straddles the line between contemporary and fantastical, and I'm really enjoying that part. I think the author has done a pretty good job of setting the atmosphere in both aspects, but with that being said, I don't think the atmosphere is like the strongest element of the story. It's not technically an urban fantasy, even though we start in Florida, they eventually travel to the Welsh countryside and then they're kind of working through like a marsh. With that kind of a setup, it's very reminiscent to many of stories that I loved when I was in middle school. Right out of the gate, can kind of think X-Men, the Cirque du Freak stories, or the Sisters Grimm, all those kind of things, which definitely make this feel like a YA story, but I'm not mad about it. I am really enjoying it. Our main character isn't the strongest. I do think he works well though for a self-insert, and that is perfect for the kind of story that this is. The writing overall weirdly feels like a mix between pretentious and immature. Does that make sense? That's such a juxtaposition, but at the same time, given the fact that we are reading this from the perspective of a rich, spoiled 15-year-old boy, kind of makes perfect sense. Like I said, I'm pretty far in. In terms of the plot, I'm actually pretty invested. We meet our main character. His grandfather would always tell him stories of these peculiar people. He would even show him photos, and eventually our main character just came to realize that they were all fairy tales or a fictionalized version of events because his grandfather actually lived in Europe during World War II. His grandfather ends up dying in a suspicious way, and he is determined to figure out whatever his grandfather's last words meant to him. So he convinces his parents to take him to Wales and starts to investigate the home where his grandfather stayed during the time of World War II. He ends up coming across Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children. Thus far, I'm intrigued by the peculiars. It definitely feels like a story that was very popular 15 years ago, and I think we've kind of moved past those sort of stories. If I read this 10 years ago, would have been all over it. The photos definitely add a creepy element to the story, but with that being said, like, it's not nearly as freaky as I was anticipating. Also, you're probably wondering, why do I have this giant thing here? That's because the library marker is on there, and I live in a small town, so yeah. Anyway, the peculiars and their powers, I'm really intrigued by that, and I'm wondering where the plot in regards to them is going to go. I don't like the fact that the world building and the explanation we have gotten around the peculiars and the home that they live in is just very like hand wavy. It's just, oh, this is the thing, and that's it. There's no question as to, okay, but why? Where did that come from? How did that come? It's not really establishing much of a backstory, and the world building is pretty minimal. So all in all, I am enjoying this, but like I said, I just think it's kind of past its prime. I don't know if I'm really gonna love this as much as I would have if I read it when I was in middle school or high school. I also found out that apparently, even though there's 6 books in this series, it's technically more like 2 trilogies set in the same universe. I don't really know if I'm gonna want to push through for all of that. It's a strong start, but not so strong that I'm like desperate for more. I'm definitely gonna finish it because I'm just curious to see where the plot is going to go. Oh, I totally forgot. A side bit that I can see developing and I do not like is a little teenage romance that's blooming between our main character and his grandfather's ex-girlfriend. She is technically a teenager as well, even if she's been alive for quite some time and had a thing with his grandfather. Why was that necessary, Ransom Riggs? I'm really wondering. Did you need to include that? I don't think you did. I am estimating this is probably going to be like a 3.5 stars, somewhere around there. I'm probably going to finish this tomorrow because the audiobook reads very fast. Anytime I'm looking at the book itself, I'm mostly just thumbing through the photos. I do enjoy them. I think they add an extra oomph to the story. Again, overall, the actual story itself, it's like it had a fantastic premise, it had a great setup, but the actual execution we're getting is just not nearly as strong as I would like. I am very intrigued to watch the movie though. If I finish this before I go to Josh's this weekend, I might make him watch the movie with me. It's definitely not going to be the same because obviously, but I want to see how they do. I want to see how they bring this vision to life, particularly with Tim Burton's style. Hey guys, so I officially finished out Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. In the end, I enjoyed this, but I don't think it was a terribly original story, and it wasn't really amazing enough for me to want to continue the series, if I'm being honest. Once again, I will say I would have loved this book if I read it back in middle school, but we're a little too late for that. I think the writing style is probably the biggest plus I can say about this book. It has great readability. There's a feeling of uneasiness that just permeates the entire story. I think he writes the line between that fantasy feeling as well as having a mystery element in it. And again, how I was saying earlier, that he does a fantastic job in creating this setting that manages to go between contemporary and fantasy. I was really impressed with Ransom Riggs's writing style the entire way through. That being said though, the plot feels underdeveloped and as though Ransom Riggs was kind of just making it up as he went along. The villain characters are kind of like too cartoony evil. Like I couldn't get a good read on them. I didn't really understand why they were doing what they're doing. We don't get a very good explanation to their motive. I don't even really understand what their end game is. So with that being said, I don't know where this is possibly going to go in the future. I did really like that there is a time loop element in this. That's something I really enjoy in books, but I don't see a lot of it. And by the end of this book, that kind of got tossed out the window. So That's not really a plus anymore. While I was really intrigued by the peculiars, I think there were way too many of them introduced. I had a very hard time keeping all of the side characters straight. And then again, I'm just gonna say this once more. The romantic element is so weird. So weird. And what's even worse is Riggs literally acknowledges it in the book. He mentions that it's strange for him to have feelings for the girl that his grandfather was in love with. Does that stop him? No, it doesn't. And that's freaking weird because of course it's a YA fantasy. So for some reason we have to have teenage hormones thrown in. Why not? Yeah, it was so unnecessary, so uncomfortable. I don't get it. I don't get it. In the end, that means I gave this book like 3 stars when I ran it through Compile. I think it definitely would have been perfect for me when I was younger. I think this definitely is great for the audience that it has, but I also think it's kind of idea that has been rehashed many a times now. However, with all of that being said, I'm still definitely going to watch the movie of this weekend with Josh because I'm really intrigued to see how Tim Burton brings this to life. I do know that technically this character right here is supposed to be Emma in the book, but I think this character is named Emma in the movie. So my hope is that means the romantic element in this is not with the same girl that his grandfather had feelings with. Anyway, so 3 stars, glad to have this off my TBR. Don't really see myself continuing the series though. Hey guys, so ironically, I ended up picking what was the oldest book that had been on my TBR last. I don't know why I did this in reverse order, but I did. Anyway, so I started into The Giver by Lois Lowery, and if you are unaware, this is a dystopian society novel, which is not really something I'm a big fan of. I honestly got burnt out on dystopians when I was in school. I felt like every single year we read at least 2 of them. That's just not a fantasy area I've ever been particularly obsessed with, so I didn't know going in how I was gonna feel about this. The last time I read a dystopian novel was when I picked up The Handmaid's Tale my junior year of college, and it was fine. Like, I think it was a 3-star read. Wasn't going into this with the highest expectations, even though everybody who has read this has only ever had positive things to say. I will admit, I am actually having a better time with this thus far than I was expecting. I am at the halfway point exactly. I appreciate that Lowery really just drops you into this utopian society and you kind of have to figure your way through and understand what are the differences here from our own world. We're following Jonas, who is a 12-year-old boy, and I do think that Lowery has done a pretty solid job of putting you into a 12-year-old's mindset. I haven't really been won over by Jonas or any of the side characters, which are mostly his family, a few of his friends. None of them feel incredibly deep. Possible that that is a purposeful choice, but I'm not sure if it is, so I'm gonna review it like it's not. In being dropped into this society, you do learn about all of the eccentricities that come about with it, such as birthing mothers being actually considered a job. Everybody travels via bicycle. All children are adopted, and medicine is actually regulated, as well as careers being chosen for people whenever they turn 12. So obviously, since Jonas is about to turn 12, we get to see what this whole experience is like. However, Jonas is unfortunately not given a career. He is actually selected to become the receiver of the memories for everything that happens within the society, as well as the world previous to this. I'm pretty impressed that Lowery has kind of slid in some more mature topics into this society that probably wouldn't garner that much attention from a younger reader, but if you're an adult reading this, you can definitely pick up on some of those facts. With that said though, she does not expand on any of them very much, and I think she missed an opportunity there to really kick off some interesting conversations, which is a big deal because I feel like most dystopian novels are there to start conversations. With this being a dystopian society, I will say this doesn't feel like the most original thing out there. I think this book came out in like the 90s. Yes, this came out in 1993, so there definitely been other dystopian novels previous to this who I could obviously relate this to, and I think the society would have been even more impactful if it did have something that really helped it stand out. Like I said, I've just hit the point where Jonas has been chosen to be the receiver of memories, and it's really interesting that even in the memories memories Jonas is shown, we are able to understand more of the differences between this world and the current utopian world. But again, I wish there would be more explanation there for why things are the way they are. All in all, I am enjoying this. I'm working through it really fast. I mean, it's like 200 pages. It's not very long at all. I'll probably finish this tomorrow. Well, yeah, probably tomorrow. Hey friends, so I officially finished out The Giver by Lois now, and this really went downhill in the second half for me. The pacing just was so off. At one point, the author actually drops a comment saying that a year has passed, and I was so taken off guard by this. I did not feel like a year could have taken place in between everything we had been learning. Obviously, it had to have been a time jump, but it just felt so sudden and out of nowhere. Like, how did we suddenly become a year forward in time? How did it take this long for Jonas to start asking these sorts of questions and that many memories for him to start realizing the peak differences between his civilization and the society that he has grown to know through the memories he is receiving? I still maintain I do think this would have really benefited with a bit more explanation as to the society he is currently living in, why it is this way, how it came to be this way. I just think it would have been a lot more immersive and even more interesting if we had that information. There's a reveal that kind of acts as the catalyst for Jonas to officially start to realize everything that is wrong with this society. I don't know if it was supposed to be a twist, because I saw that coming from a mile away. I thought that was incredibly obvious. I don't know, I feel like thinking of that as a twist, even for kids, is like underestimating kids. Once again, that event and then Jonas's reaction, which then kicks off the final climax, also felt very sudden, very out of nowhere. All of a sudden it was just like, oh, we're doing this, and then suddenly the end is here, and like, what the f was that ending? It felt like a non-ending. It just seemed like kind of a cop-out. Since this is a dystopian book, usually with those there carries some kind of a message, and I feel like it just wasn't very well nuanced here. It was very obvious what Lowery was trying to showcase to the reader without really bringing up any actual big moral questions that come about with this sort of a society. Yeah, there isn't any free choice, but there's also absolutely no war in this world. Like, they don't even understand what war is. Or would you be willing to give up your fertility if you could ensure that everyone in your life that you love will never starve? Just questions like that popped into my head, and I think could definitely be interesting points of discussion for young adult readers. With that being said, obviously this is the first in a quartet of books. I don't actually know if perhaps the author might go into some of those bigger questions or even explain more about how the society came to be down the line. With the plot that takes place in this book, I'm not really intrigued enough to continue with the series, so I don't think the author did a well enough job of engaging me in this story so that I would want more of it. This is a earlier dystopian book, so I will applaud it for the impact it likely had on many other big name YA dystopian books that definitely got kids interested in reading. That's awesome. Unfortunately for me, this continued to prove my point that dystopians just aren't a genre I enjoy. I don't know why. Even the Hunger Games, I was not really that big of a fan of. I don't know what it is about dystopians. Like, literally the only one I can think of that I enjoyed and actually had a great time talking about is 1984. Any other dystopian book I've ever read just like doesn't click with me, doesn't work. In the end, I went with about a 2.5 star rating on this one. Like I said, I might have liked this more if I read it whenever I originally put it on my Goodreads TBR. Now, not for me. 2.5 stars, it was fine. I don't regret reading it, at least now I know. And I won't constantly be wondering what is it that I missed out on. Okay, so the base premise of this video was talking about the books that have been on my TBR the longest, and I think we can see that obviously my tastes have changed a little bit over the years. Okay guys, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials linked in the description if you're interested in keeping up with what I am reading. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!